From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Thursday morning. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. New this morning, a missing endangered person advisory has been issued for a Custer County girl believed to be held against her will. 14-year-old Serenity Wilson was last seen yesterday in Miles City. She was first reported as a runaway, but police now think she's been kidnapped by 17-year-old Toby Pittman. Authorities say Pittman has made threats against law enforcement in the past and is known to carry knives. Serenity was last seen wearing black sweatpants and white and pink shoes. She's 5'3" tall with brown hair and blue eyes. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Custer County Sheriff's Office at 232-3411 or call 911. In election news, we still don't know who will occupy the White House for the next 4 years as the country continues to wait for election results. There are 6 states yet to be called. That's Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Alaska. CBS's Laura Podesta brings us the latest.
Supporters of President Trump gathered outside a vote counting center in Maricopa County.
We're not trying to break in. We just like to watch you count the ballots.
The president trails former Vice President Joe Biden in Arizona, but there are still votes left to be counted. In Detroit, Trump supporters demanded Michigan officials stop working. The president had a lead on election night, but CBS News projects Biden won the state after legally cast mail-in ballots were added to the total.
And we are here to defend the right to vote.
Activists around the country marched through the streets yesterday.
It's our right to vote. All the votes must be counted for.
The Trump campaign is launching legal challenges in several states.
We're going to win Pennsylvania, but they're trying to cheat us out of it.
The president holds slim leads in both Pennsylvania and Georgia, but the remaining ballots, all cast on or before Election Day, come from Democratic-leaning areas.
In Pennsylvania, every vote is going to count.
CBS News projects that former Vice President Joe Biden is the presumptive winner in Wisconsin, but that lead is small enough that the Trump campaign is expected to ask for a recount.
We believe we will be the winners.
Speaking in Delaware, the former vice president looked past the election.
It'll be time for us to do what we've always done as Americans, to unite, to heal, to come together as a nation.
In addition to Arizona, Nevada is also leaning toward Biden. And with electoral votes from those 2 states, he would be right at the 270 needed to win. Laura Podesta, CBS News, Washington.
President Trump also currently leads in both North Carolina and Alaska. More results are expected to come in later this morning in all undecided races. Well, no matter who wins the presidential election, Republicans did maintain control of the U.S. Senate. Before the election, many Democrats believed they could steal Montana from incumbent Steve Daines and poured in millions of dollars to back his challenger, Governor Steve Bullock. That, of course, didn't happen. Daines blew out Bullock by double digits. He said he believed the high voter turnout benefited his campaign, but he even thought the race would be closer.
I don't think anybody saw a 10-point win coming, and yet Montanans understood what was at stake in this election. Despite the fact, I think it will be a $170, $180 million race. Montanans didn't seem to be persuaded by all that out-of-state money.
Now it's time to get a check of weather with Ed. Good morning. And do we have another day on the calendar of warmth?
We do. In fact, we could be close to a record high, especially when we're starting off at 53 degrees right now. That's a typical high temperature for this time of the year, so we're just going to go up from here. And the winds aren't a big deal in Billings right now. Yesterday, we hit 73 for a high, 4 degrees shy of the record, and we're going to be right in the same ballpark by later on in the afternoon. Temperatures are into the 40s, 50s, and a couple of low 60s on the map, with Lewistown at 60 degrees and then 62 up in Havre to get the morning started today. Temperatures in the 50s through much of southern Montana, northern Wyoming. A little cooler for you around Sheridan to get started, but you'll warm up. Winds are strong down the east slopes of the Rockies once again today. Once the winds start to ease up tonight, heading into tomorrow, we're going to start to see a change in the weather. Southern Montana, northern Wyoming, for the reporting stations we've got, we're in the 40s, 50s, and then Clark, Wyoming, a little bit warmer, 61. Temperatures today in Billings will likely make it back up into those the 70s, close to a record high. But I'll tell you about all the changes, some fairly dramatic changes later in the weekend. Details in a few minutes.
Yeah, I was trying to do some yard work yesterday. I procrastinated enough, so I was like, I better just get this done. But the wind was kind of messing with me, blowing the leaves away that I just raked up, and it was just like,
you try and aim them for the neighbor's yard and hope they don't notice.
Hope the neighbor has taller grass.
Yeah.
All right, Ed. Well, thank you so much. I will get back to the news.
Thanks.
Even though Montana voters gave their clear backing to marijuana legalization, the state legislature may still put its own stamp on the program before any commercial sales begin. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian has the details.
According to supporters of Initiative 190, now that Montana voters have approved recreational marijuana, legal sales could begin as soon as February 2022. But there's still an open question whether Montana lawmakers will make changes to the new statute before those provisions can go into effect. As the results came in Tuesday night, I-190 consistently led by a substantial margin, including narrow leads in Republican-leaning counties like Ravalli and Flathead. Some in the Montana legislature have already indicated they're interested in taking a look at marijuana laws during next year's session. Last month, State Representative Derek Skees, a Republican from Kalispell, requested a bill that would repeal I-190. But he told MTN after seeing the wide support for 190, he's not interested in moving forward with it.
Pretty much the will of the people, man, and I work for them, and so...
But Skees says he's still concerned about the health impacts of making marijuana more available, and that the revenues supporters expect may not materialize. He said he wouldn't be surprised if there is an effort to add more limits.
There's a lot of lessons that we have from the state of Washington and Oregon and the failures of legalizing recreational marijuana, and I hope to use those lessons to help us fine-tune this thing.
Senator Diane Sands, a Democrat from Missoula, is also interested in making adjustments. She says she wants to look at how the money from tax revenue is allocated.
I think marijuana, whatever revenue it generates, should pay its own costs in terms of the negative impacts it's going to have on society, whether that is questions around testing, whether it's job issues, addictions for people who do have addictions to drugs. This is a drug. It does have consequences.
As I-190 was written, it would direct some sales tax revenue to substance abuse treatment, as well as things like conservation programs and veterans services. But the legislature has final responsibility for appropriating money. While the legislature may want to make changes to I-190, some provisions of the law, including legalizing possession and use of small amounts of marijuana, are set to take effect January 1st, before the next legislative session even convenes. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
The leader of the group that sponsored the initiative called it a carefully crafted policy that has been vetted and approved by voters. Now to a local election where the Northern Cheyenne tribe is making history electing females for all of its open tribal council seats. The tribe also held its election on Tuesday. Of the 5 open seats on the tribal council, along with the tribal president and vice president, all winners were women. The tribe has a total of 10 council seats for 5 different districts across the reservation. Once the newly elected members are sworn in, all but 3 will be female. The term for the 5 other seats not voted for on Tuesday will expire in 2022. Continuing our coverage, a suspect is in jail in Idaho this morning for a weekend murder here in Billings. 37-year-old Benil Davis was arrested just outside of Coeur d'Alene on a deliberate homicide warrant. The Billings resident is accused of shooting and killing Waylon Bear Ground near the 4100 block of King Avenue East on Sunday. Billings police say they're working with Idaho authorities as the investigation continues. In court news, Montana is joining the Department of Justice and 11 other states in a lawsuit against Google. They claim the tech company is unlawfully maintaining a monopoly through anti-competitive and exclusionary practices. MTN's Phoenix O'Connor spoke with Attorney General Tim Fox to find out why this lawsuit matters to Montanans and small business owners.
This isn't the first time the government has sued a big company. Historic antitrust actions have been made against AT&T in 1974, Microsoft in 1998, and going back to the Sherman Antitrust Act, it's the first measure passed by the U.S. Congress to prohibit trust monopolies and cartels.
Google, they have about 90% of the searches that are done over the internet.
And 95% when it comes to using mobile devices. The Attorney General's claim Google's exclusivity and pre-installation agreements, along with the favored treatment of mobile devices, makes makers like Apple create an anti-competitive and anti-consumer monopoly. And while the service may seem free because it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket, Google is profiting on the data it collects from you while using its services. It's called data mining.
Data mine, get that information and use it and sell it.
Which is why when you do that Google search on your phone, an advertisement seems to pop up for that same search right after that. That's because Google will take that data, they sell it to advertisers using artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms take advantage of Google's massive amounts of data to serve user ads. Businesses want access to that data, and Google profits on providing to advertisers and other businesses.
You end up paying more for the services and the products that you buy. Oftentimes you don't know it. It's just because of these monopolistic practices and the fact that businesses who need these search engines and other internet products end up having to pay more because they have no other option. Google getting more and more wealthy. It's one of the wealthiest companies on the planet.
According to Forbes magazine, the stock market value of Google is around $1 trillion.
It hurts consumers, it hurts businesses, and it hurts any kind of competition or innovation that might want to try to enter the marketplace.
In Helena, Phoenix O'Connor, MTN News.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. Turning now to the latest on the pandemic. State health leaders announced another 13 Montanans have died while infected with COVID-19. The state death toll now sits at 438. Yellowstone County added 67 new positive tests, part of the almost 800 announced across the state on Wednesday. Meanwhile, in Wyoming, health officials announced 12 virus-related deaths. The state crossed over the 100 mark with 105 residents succumbing to COVID there since March. All of the new deaths came within the last month. Residents from Bighorn, Fremont, and Sweetwater counties accounted for 6 of those deaths. And it turns out it's just as bad for the U.S. as a whole. For the first time in a single day, the country recorded more than 100,000 new coronavirus cases. CNN's John Lawrence has the latest on the pandemic.
Despite President Donald Trump's repeated claim that the coronavirus would one day disappear, it hasn't yet.
Make no mistake, this pandemic isn't over, not by a long shot. And it's not enough for us to just know more. We have to act differently.
A report from the White House Coronavirus Task Force is warning states that there is a continued increase in cases, hospitalizations, and fatalities nationally, spreading southward from the coldest climates as the population moves indoors and cases increase exponentially.
This is an absolute killer, and we have got to stay on our toes. We've got to wear a mask. I mean, how big a deal is this when it really, really gets right down to it?
North Dakota has the highest number of cases per capita in the U.S., but most states are seeing an increase in cases, including Kansas.
Wichita has 2 major hospitals, Ascension Via Christi and Wesley Medical Center, have 0 ICU beds available.
And Illinois.
Compared to just last week, every single one of our 11 regions has seen an increase in the average number of people going into the hospital every day with COVID-19.
But some health experts say it's too late to develop a national testing strategy. I'm John Lawrence.
In education news, an entire Billings elementary class is quarantining, and COVID-19 cases in our local schools are multiplying. Not all of the students in that classroom tested positive, but anyone who is a close contact must also stay home. Billings Public Schools officials have warned parents and teachers to be prepared for classes to be moved online. However, they say that's not in their immediate plans. One major concern as staff members are forced to quarantine is finding substitute teachers.
What's interesting with that is it seems like school A will be impacted for a period of time and they'll be down, and then they'll get their staff back and they'll be fine, and then school B will be okay. Will be down for a while, and that will happen. And then they get their people back, and then we move forward. What I'm concerned about is if school A, B, and C are all impacted at the same time. That creates major issues, not that the others don't.
In the last week of October, Billings schools had 74 active COVID-19 cases among students and staff. Early on during the pandemic, many businesses took out loans through the Paycheck Protection Program. Some are still struggling, and paying it back could be a challenge. This morning, MTN's Gabby Crevitt tells us how small businesses in Montana can apply for loan forgiveness.
Around 24,000 small businesses across the state of Montana applied for a PPP loan through the SBA, injecting around $1.8 billion of capital into those businesses. Now many of those businesses are starting to apply for loan forgiveness. Across the entire state of Montana, Main Street certainly looks different now than it did in late March and early April of 2020. Many small businesses were forced to close temporarily because of the stay-at-home directive and have since had to adjust operations to keep in line with COVID-19 safety precautions. Congress responded by allocating hundreds of billions of dollars to support small businesses through the CARES Act, and many Montana businesses took advantage of the opportunity.
The Paycheck Protection Program emerged basically in early April. It was part of the CARES Act, and the intent was to help small businesses keep their employees on the payroll, keep their staff on throughout the COVID pandemic.
Now many of those businesses are starting to apply for loan forgiveness.
Businesses had to spend their funds on certain eligible costs, payroll, mortgage, rent, utilities. And if they do that, the loan is to be forgiven.
73% of small businesses in Montana that took advantage of the PPP loan borrowed less than $50,000, meaning the process to apply for forgiveness should be more streamlined. For loan forgiveness, small businesses must work with lenders to show how they spent funds.
You need to provide documentation of what you spent those funds on. So if it's payroll records, tax forms. If it's rent, it may be bank statements, copies of canceled checks.
And if businesses did not spend their funds on eligible expenses,
they would then begin repaying that loan to the lender in accordance with the terms of their loan agreement, which was either a 2-year or 5-year term.
Reporting in Bozeman, Gabby Crevitt, MTN News.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Some exciting news for Montana football fans. The Cats and Grizz will kick off a 6-game spring season on February 27th. UM opens the road in northern Arizona. Their first home game is March 13th against Cal Poly. Montana State begins the season in California at UC Davis. They won't play at home until March 13th either, when they'll meet up with Northern Colorado and Bozeman. Of course, everyone here in the Treasure State will circle the 27th of March for the annual Cat Grizz game.